Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another odd daytime edition of the Morning Skate. It's your host Brownie, no Ked today, just me, and I am joined by the first female member of the Northeastern University Athletic Hall of Fame, the name to the Northeastern all-time Title IX team, and four-time member of the U.S. national team, Kelly Dyer Hayes. Kelly, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Great to have you. I'm glad we got to do this in the little lull here with the season in between the holidays. It worked out nicely.
Yeah, it's perfect time. A little break between the chaos.
Exactly. But listen, before we get started, I have two questions for you right off the bat. One, when was the last time you were in the ocean?
What's today? Let's see. It's Monday, so that would be Saturday.
Okay, polar bear, yeah. And then the other one, how's the squirrel? Have you seen the squirrel? Has the squirrel been back?
Well, I have a little bit of sad news,
Oh
but a
no.
happy twist. So the squirrel that my daughter rescued and that she fed with an eyedropper,
Yeah.
and we got him to a point of maturity, and then we released him successfully. It was an amazing experience, not only for my daughter, but for my husband and I as
Right,
well.
yeah.
As just they're great creatures. And then he was free squirrel and living the life until he got hit by a car.
Oh no.
Yeah. And he had some distinctive marks to him. He had red tops of his feet and two stripes sort of coming down his mid. So it was very clear that it was him. And, I was very upset. And I think I was probably more worried about telling my daughter. And then she got home from school and I said, so, Cashew got hit by a car today. And she's like, that's why there's many of them.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Yeah, that's a healthy way. Oh my gosh.
But a quick wrap on that. So Cashew, again, he just hit maturity, and then out back, there's sort of a hierarchy to squirrels. We learned quite
Yeah.
a bit during this time, and there's this one bossy squirrel out back, and we named him Skinny Tail. And we're like, why is Skinny Tail always bossing Cashew around so much? Like, whatever, he'll fight for himself. Well, shortly after Cashew's death, Skinny Tail developed six very large breasts, and then went on to have three babies, and all three of the babies look just like Cashew. So,
That's great.
so we have Cashew's three children now to watch and enjoy.
And as a tip to any journalists out there, that's why you ask those questions before you hit record, so you avoid that. I followed that whole journey I think you had everything on Facebook, right? You were putting up stuff? Yeah.
It was pretty cool. I joined a couple of societies because there's a lot to learn. Like, we needed to get some formula for him. And so just to learn about that. So I joined a couple of Facebook groups, and there's a lot of crazy squirrel people out there. And but they're super nice and caring, and we learned so much about, again, their hierarchy and their pecking orders, and they have tremendous personalities. And I know they can be annoying and a pest at times, but they're really, really cute.
Oh, that's great. I mean, at least the babies are there, and like your daughter said, there's plenty of squirrels. There's no shortage. It's not an endangered species.
Exactly.
So born in New Jersey, but raised right up the road from me in Acton, and now up on the North Shore. How'd you get your start in hockey?
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Boston area. We had this amazing player called Bobby Orr playing in the Garden. And so he had a huge influence on all of us. And then I have an older brother named David.
Okay.
And he and all of his buddies in my neighborhood would all play street hockey every day after school, kind of, again, inspired by Bobby Orr. And the only way they'd let me play was if I was the goalie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the transition to ice was just to kind of follow them along, basically, or?
Well, no, because at the time I was figure skating.
Oh, okay. Yep. Right.
But I grew to be 5'11" by the age of 12. And so that became a little awkward. And I always wanted to play hockey, but there was not a lot of girls' women's hockey at the time. And it was my father actually who found a program, again, just a couple towns over in Concord, which was Assabet.
Yep.
And so after 2 years of asking, I was able to give hockey a shot with them, and then stayed with them all the way through college and everything. So.
Over at Valley Sports, right? Is that?
Yep.
So for all those that are watching or listening, all those clips that we have on our regular podcast, we do clips in between each segment. and they're all like of me being an idiot. Those were all filmed at Valley Sports. Shout out Paula for all her help and giving us the ice and everything over there.
So Paula was my teammate all the way through, and all of
Ask if
that.
you knew her. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's awesome. She's such a good person. Yeah, she does a great
wonderful
job over there.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Um,
one little side story
Good.
too. So at that age, you play with your age group,
Right.
and so I was playing girls hockey for Assabet, and again, I had asked to be a goalie for the longest time. And like we had a wonderful goalie, Sue Mead, and they're like, no, we have a goalie. We don't have a goalie. And one time, car broke down or something happened, and she wasn't there, and it was a game, so I just played in regular players equipment and did pretty well. And really from that day on, I was a goalie. So at the same time, over at Acton Boxborough Youth Hockey, which didn't have a girls team at the time, they just had a gap in age group where there was no boy goalie in my age segment.
Oh,
So occasionally I would just get the call, and again, my brother was playing for AB boys hockey. I just get the call, like, can you just be goalie for us, Saturday at 2? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. So I kind of just was a fill in as needed there, but because it is by age group, then fast forward to high school hockey, those guys knew me as a goalie since we were, young teenagers. So that worked out really well. Fast forwarding to high school hockey.
so I'm glad you mentioned that because I remember you were the first girl to play high school hockey with the boys in Massachusetts. Or actually, I guess technically it was the first girl to play high school hockey because there was no girls team. Because I remember the Boston Globe articles when
Yeah,
I remember it was a
you
big
do.
deal. I do.
That's
I
pretty
honestly
funny.
remember. Yeah, I was talking to some
Yeah.
of my buddies from the same age, and we were like, "Yeah." They were like, "Yeah." Once I reminded them, yeah, because
Yeah.
I grew up in Framingham, so we're talking 2 towns over.
Right. I don't know if I fully remember, but during COVID, I really dug down deep and kind of reorganized all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, kind of had time to take a look at it all, and it was pretty neat. But I think there was a couple women that played before me at different high schools. And I think it was the first one to play Division 1
Oh,
schoolboy
maybe
hockey.
that's what. Okay, that's what that
Yeah.
was the difference. Yeah. Okay.
I'm blanking right now on who it was. I'm not sure if it was Lisa Whitcomb, maybe with Stoneham, but there's definitely a couple. But then, again, I had a few high profile players on my team,
Yeah.
which then made it, more notable as well.
Those you're talking Tom Barrasso, Jeff Norton, Bob Sweeney. I mean, Tom Barrasso's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Bob
Yes.
Sweeney's huge with the Bruins and the alumni and everything. Yeah, I remember all those guys playing.
But
Were
then
there others?
also Alan Borbeau and Mark Foland. I mean, it
Oh
was,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Kevin Houle. I mean, it was really quite impressive. But we did have, I think it was 5 guys of that time period go into the NHL from our high school hockey team.
Which is
But
a
again,
small, not a huge team and not a
I
huge
know.
program. Yeah,
Yeah, and thinking that, Tommy went directly from high school into the NHL.
yeah.
Pretty
Penguins,
remarkable.
right to the Penguins, right? Wasn't he? Wasn't he
No,
break in Buffalo?
Buffalo.
Buffalo. That's right. Yep,
Yeah,
Buffalo.
which was funny because same colors, and actually at Acton Boxborough at the time
Oh, that's right.
we wore the multi-striped, sleeves and the multi-striped socks. So he didn't even have to change uniforms.
You other sports you played growing up too, or were you focused on hockey or a little bit of everything?
Little bit of everything, actually. So soccer was probably my second favorite sport. I was a goaltender in that as well. Um, but also did track and field. Not a runner,
Yeah.
but I threw the javelin, and then did softball, and then also did swim team as well.
Oh,
And
nice.
then freshman year in high school, we weren't sure what was going to happen with a girl trying out for a boys team, so I also tried out for girls basketball as well. Of course, being very tall compared to others
I was
at the
gonna say
time was
5'11", the coach was probably like, "Come on down."
yes, exactly. So yeah, I really just played whatever. And then towards the end of my high school, we didn't have lacrosse at Acton Boxborough at that time, but I did a postgraduate year at New Hampton,
Yep.
and so then I started playing lacrosse as well.
Yeah, it's a great sport, and I was gonna ask you about New Hampton. So you played forward on the women's team and goalie for the men's team? Do I have that right?
Yes. So the men's team had 3 or 4 teams. So they basically had a team that would just play against other colleges to gain exposure for those players. Then they had varsity JV and freshmen. So I just played in between varsity and JV with them.
Just
But
wherever you
like,
could get some time.
yeah. So Dave Littman was the number one goalie, went on to the NHL.
Mhm.
And he was super nice to me too. So it was great. Sometimes we'd just go and work out together. And at that time, women's hockey at prep school was so new that it wasn't thought that if I played goalie with such a slow level play that it would be helpful for me.
Yeah.
So I actually played out and just sort of helped. A couple of players on our team had never even seen ice before.
Wow.
Because in prep school it's mandatory to play a sport
Yeah.
or
Every
do
season.
something academic.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember Angela. She had never seen ice, so I was able to sort of help teach hockey to these
Isn't that
guys.
crazy how much it's changed in that short a time? It's
Yeah.
amazing. It is amazing. I also read somewhere that you were a big Ken Dryden fan growing up.
Yes.
No love for Cheevers. I mean, come on.
Well, Cheers, yes, but Jojo Joubert was my favorite
Okay.
for Boston, big time. But I always really just took to Ken and everything he did. He stood for, high focus on academics,
Yeah.
very poised. He was absolutely my favorite goaltender, as far as, as a role model, as a player.
We actually, within the last month or so on the podcast, we just had this whole blurb someone found about Ken Dryden. First off, he was drafted by the Bruins, and he didn't know till like 10 years into his career, his agent finally told him.
Yeah.
And he never knew. And I think if I remember, I'm probably going to get some facts wrong, but I think like he stepped away from the game and went to law school, became a lawyer, and then was like, oh, maybe I'll give it another go, and went back to hockey after. It's crazy, the story.
Yeah, so he played 5 years in the NHL and won five Stanley
Yeah.
Cups. So you want to talk about a crazier coincidence? So fast forward, after college hockey, I went and played men's professional
Mm,
hockey.
yep.
And so the founder and the director of our league, and then also turned out to be my coach, Bill Nyrop, was Ken Dryden's roommate on the
Oh
road.
man, it's like it all, it's like the butterfly. It all connects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's
And
crazy.
then Coach Nyrop actually did the same thing after winning the cups. And I think you do get to a point of what else is there to achieve? Like I have fulfilled this part and then just trying to recreate that constantly. So Bill did the same thing and he went on and got his law degree. And he actually knew that he wanted to do something in hockey and he wanted to have the ability to not only read to then negotiate and then sign his own contracts. So he went to law school for that purpose. I think that Ken Dryden went more to learn critical thinking
Yeah.
because he really wanted to be an author. And so he was, as you know, he's written
Yep.
some famous books, but then he also was in a newspaper and different um, magazines and things along the way.
He's like the hockey version of that, the Dos Equis commercial, the most interesting man, 5 Stanley Cups, now I'm gonna go to law school.
So I
Yeah.
have another interesting Ken
No, go
story to
ahead,
tell
yeah.
you. So when I was playing for Northeastern, the growth of organized college hockey in Canada was just beginning.
Mm,
So it was University of Toronto, Concordia, and one others, but those were the two that we played. So we would go back and forth, and then again try to, you know, not only have the relationship there and grow the game, but then exposure in both areas. So I think we alternated years. So the year we were playing University of Toronto, Ken at the time was working on ice documentaries.
oh,
And he wanted the player's perspective. And so at our game at University of Toronto, he put on like half player's gear and had the camera that was then
oh, that's
connected to
awesome.
the ice. And so he filmed the game from the ice perspective. And I think at the time he was also studying body checking in women's ice hockey. Because, our first world championships in 90 was full out body checking.
Oh, it
And
was?
then,
I didn't
yes, it
I didn't
was.
know that, and then they dialed
Yeah.
it back after that.
They did because again they were looking at the viewership potential and they found that the body checking actually just slowed the game down.
Huh, okay.
So it didn't add to it. So they really wanted to turn the other way. And I always like to use Lisa Brown Miller as an example. So Lisa was an amazing player, and she was 5'1" and 128 pounds. So somebody like that getting body checked, you have lost her ability to have that finesse and those
Right.
movements that she could do. So I think Ken was part of that as well, of that discovery. So it was really kind of cool. So he came into the locker room, and so he came in, and he must have heard about me, that I was always a big fan, and he came to say hello. And somebody's like, "Let's get a picture of Kelly and Ken." And we're in the corner of the dressing room, next to my stall. And so we both turn, and the whole team's like, "Well, we want to be in the picture too." So the whole team dove in, and this is about all you see of me. So it's pretty fun. But Ken looked really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's great. It's funny we talk about the checking and in the women's hockey and the size of the players, some of the players. And I was talking with Coach Carp, and with the checking now becoming into the game a little bit, or the physicality, I guess, not the checking. And you can see it shifting the other way. He said they have to kind of reassess the way they start to recruit now if it goes more physical. And there are going to
Right.
be players that are going to be left, unfortunately, they're going to be some really highly talented players that are going to be left by the wayside because of what you said, the stature and the size and being able to withstand it. But for every 5 that do, one will make it through, hopefully, some that has the talent. Yeah,
Right.
it's
Well, look at Kendall
interesting.
Coyne as a perfect example,
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
Kendall versus Hillary, the two extremes, and power, strength, and speed, but also hockey IQ. But I think the mesh of keeping both is beautiful. But I mean,
yeah,
even look at the Bruins right now with
yeah,
our captain. He's not
yeah.
the tallest of guys, so
No, no. Yeah,
uh,
that's true.
something
Yeah, it's
about
interesting.
grit and determination gets a lot done in this game as well.
The size of the fight and the dog, not the dog in the fight, right?
That's right.
They say. So, all right, so after New Hampton, and I wanna mention this, Hall of Fame at both Active Boxborough and New Hampton, not a big deal. Just wanna slide that in, but give you your props.
It's
So
nice.
at Northeastern, hockey, soccer, and lacrosse you did? All 3?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, come on. I've coached players that have gone on to D1 for one sport,
Yeah.
and to do 2 is crazy. To do 3, I mean, that's nuts. And you stayed in school. Usually, the people that do multiple sports, it's for like a year, and then they're like hitting me up at the other job to see if I have any hours for them. Yeah, just
Yeah, and then I also had a dual major, and my boyfriend lived at home. So yeah, there was a lot going on.
my
So,
God.
um, but back then it was a little bit different. We didn't have the full year training. I think of
Yeah.
another athlete, Julie Sasner, who was at Harvard the same years as me, and she did the same. Um, and again, you kind of just pace yourself. And I see it in my daughter now. She's like, I do better in my academics when I'm in sport, because
Mm.
I know I don't have that much free time.
So you're
um
focused more. Yeah, I get it.
yeah, you really put it in its segment. It's like, okay, so I have free time in this block, this is what I'm doing, I need to get this done. And then I also kind of recall that little bit of that fear factor, in the NCAA. If you don't maintain a certain grade point average, you can't play. And
Right.
that was probably my greatest fear in college. So it really drove me to do well in school.
No, that it's fantastic. And listen, the academics aside, back-to-back ECAC championships, which at that time was the national championship. So
Yeah.
pretty good success, I would say.
Yeah. We just, as a team, got inducted into the Hall of
Yep.
Fame. And it was just absolutely amazing. Our entire team was there except for one athlete who
Oh,
was
really? That's great.
on a work project in India. So she was greatly missed. But to see everybody after, I always tell people, don't do the math, but it was 30 years. So,
Ah,
um, but I would look into a player's eyes, and just like these memories came
yeah,
rushing back like a video inside my head. And it wasn't always like a great goal by Donnellan Rosa, or, these types of things. It was like, remember that time on the bus, like
yeah.
when I don't know, something or other. And so it was much more powerful than I would have ever expected.
Well, the relationships that you form are the strongest things, and if you talk to anyone from your level in like a international play or a pros or even like beer league guys, or women, the thing you miss is the time in the locker room, the time on the bench, the time in the parking lot, or at the Hall of Fame thing, the Punter's Pub they set up in the parking lot over at Matthews. But that's the times that you miss. It's the personality part of it. You know, the gameplay is great, but you know, it's the relationships that you form.
And it's so true what they say. You know, it's been said in beautiful ways before, but it's a bond that happens through, you know, achieving that common goal and just, you know, giving all of yourself for your teammates. And once you come to that level of connection, it truly, it lasts a lifetime. It's really
Yeah.
remarkable. It was way more fun and actually emotional than I had anticipated.
Yeah.
Being with everyone.
And that team, 4-time Beanpot champ. You were the captain for 2 years. Let's go into your numbers a little bit. 2.04 goals against, back-to-back team MVP with a record of 48-3-1 in your time there. I mean, come on. It's like you were the first one to start goalie you, it sounds like, you know?
Yeah, I have to say, you know, teammates,
Right,
and
right.
defense. You know, I had a defenseman, Donalyn Rosa, Donnie, and you know, from day one at practice, like somebody just, you know, did a long shot in the clearing pass, I just turned my paddle of my stick and put it on the tape of her stick, and from that day forward, we didn't even need to speak. We just had this connection, and so, you know. Joy Woolley, Nina Koyama, like all the D, Charlotte Hall, like it was really just a great effort and a great team connection. There was 7 players of our class as well, so we all sort of came in together and united.
Oh, that's
I
fantastic.
remember when we came in as freshmen, the 2 captains were super nice and well organized, and they just shook their head like, "Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen with this group?" So.
Oh, um, and then you were the goalie coach for a number of years, 4 years over at Northeastern as well?
Yeah, so after playing, I was then, you know, again, one thing I really love to point out is like the amazing timing in my life. So, again, the first ever women's college scholarship was given the year before I went to
Yeah.
Northeastern. So it was given to Cindy Curley at Providence College, like a year before I go. So that's amazing and a great opportunity. So then the year I'm graduating from Northeastern University is the first ever Women's Team USA.
I mean, it's like a script.
It's like, yeah, it's like people, you know, sometimes will ask me questions, you know, leaning towards the negative of hockey or something, and I'll be like, I am nothing but blessed in this situation.
Yeah.
Um, so no, that was amazing. So as Northeastern was winding down, and of course we're a 5-year university, so I had one more year at university, so staying on for my academic year was sort of a no-brainer. Um, and then it was coming to now made Team USA in 90, the next world champions 92. So we didn't have a lot of training opportunities in between. So where could I sort of play, stay on the ice, stay connected, stay in a
Yeah.
organized sort of training mentality? Plus I was working. I had a wonderful job on Newberry Street in a graphic design firm. But where to go and what to do? So this was a neat puzzle. And then again, the blessed situation that this amazing goaltender and beautiful person, Manon Rayon,
Yeah.
you know, breaks the glass ceiling and breaks the ice, if we will, for us
For Tampa
of
Bay.
women.
Yep.
Yeah, for women playing men's professional hockey. Um, so that was great, and so that's when I made the move from living in Boston. As I packed my bag one day, and I had gone to it was a pro draft league in Quincy,
Mhm.
and I just came back from training camp with Team USA. And again, they just didn't have a goaltender for, you know, Saturday at 4:20 game. Can you get here? Sure. I had no
Yeah.
idea what it was.
Yeah.
So turned out, you know, Doug Keynes was in the stands and they were just starting this new league. And so, and David Baker was there. And as we were, you know, playing, they're like, hey, you played really well. I did. It was like crazy. Maybe like with no thought about what this was, didn't seem to mean anything to me. I
You
was
didn't
just
have
having a
time to get nervous, right? Yeah.
wicked good time. Yeah, the guys were all great.
Yeah.
They're like, you played awesome. You want to come back? I'm like, sure. Like that was really fun. We won. Um, so I think I finished off the summer season with them. And then I got invited to go to camp at Jacksonville Bullets of this new Sunshine Hockey League. And so again, as leagues were starting, there was a couple little hiccups. But then I went away with Team USA. We were in temporary Finland for a training friendship game series type thing. And I got noticed that I was traded while I was away. So I got traded from Jacksonville to West Palm Beach while I was in Finland.
That's not a
That was,
sentence many people would ever say. I
I
was in
know.
Finland. I got traded from Jacksonville to West Palm.
So the weirdest thing is somebody like packed up my apartment and shipped it down with my other
Really?
extra gear on a bus down there. I'm like, awesome. Sure, we're not going to think about that too much. But um, so then, but to end up in West Palm Beach, I mean,
Yeah,
I lived on Singer Island.
yeah.
It was, a much better organization. The building was phenomenal. It was like a 5,700 person arena.
Right.
Much more activity in the community, sports. And then also Bill Nyrup was the coach, and he was also the founder of the league. So he was much more organized. He had great structure, which again, being in a woman in an all male environment, like having some structure there was really great. I remember when I showed up, he told the guys like, "Listen, you messed with her, and you're messing with me. Like, period.
Perfect. Yeah.
Nothing else needs to be said." So,
Right.
so after I was done puking the first day from the amount of humidity,
Yeah.
it
It's
was
tough down there. Yeah.
it was hot, and it was, yeah. So I had never had that kind of experience before, but you get used to it pretty quickly. So anyway, that was great to end up in West Palm. So again, much more organized. Um, Chrissy Everett and Jack Nicholas had season tickets. We had full fans and all of that. And so I was also able to do some work because my one of my degrees is in marketing. So I ended up doing some marketing things. Like
Oh,
I got
great.
sponsors involved, and the radio station. We threw a wedding on ice,
Oh,
and like
gotta
everything
love the
was
minor league
donated.
promos. They're just
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
It was, so I really got to try some things. I got like I got involved in the Special Olympics. I got the guys involved in running clinics for kids on tennis courts, and like they were all, we're not doing this, forget that. And I got them over there, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And we did the hospital visits and all of those things. And again, the guys, you know, they didn't think they'd enjoy it, but there was a good, 6, 8 of them that just were amazing at it, and I think they really got a lot out of it.
Well, and it had all translated too on the ice. You guys, three-time Sunshine Hockey League champs, 93, 94, 95. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that whole bonding thing and doing stuff together on and off the ice, it translates usually to on ice success as well.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
And then I think, really opened up another emotional aspect for them too. It wasn't really just about playing hockey. We were a big part of the community and
right.
what was going on.
Everybody buys in.
Yeah. So that was a great, great experience.
You know,
Really
it's
had a good
funny you
time.
said you glossed over your Olympic experience in this, you in the national team. So
Yeah.
you mentioned Finland, also 90 in Ottawa, 94 in Lake Placid. I mean, I feel like we should give some shine to that. As you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was following the Ken Dryden story, then the
no,
Bill
it's
Nyrup
fine.
story.
It's
That's
fine.
right. I was
It's fine.
following the pack.
I didn't want to miss it, that's all. So
Yeah.
those national teams, I mean, talk about exposure to maybe not the casual fan, but in the hockey world, I mean, that's huge exposure for the
Yeah.
program, for everything.
Yeah, and the organizers, so through the International Ice Hockey Federation and the combination of Team Canada and Team USA, USA Hockey, having the first ever World Championships being in Ottawa, so being in Canada, where it could be embraced to a level like we had never seen before,
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
So we sold out an NHL building, so sold out Ottawa's building. Um, the place was just rocking. It was amazing. It was on, in Canada, it was on TSN. So I think it was 1.3 million viewers. And so again, hockey, women's hockey taken to a whole nother level than not even just focusing on the game, but like the excitement and the build up into it. And it was really remarkable. In the final game versus Canada, we had taken an early lead, and then Canada scored their first goal. And I remember the building erupted to such a level that my rib cage was shaking.
Really?
And I was like, holy shit, am I like wicked nervous or no? I'm like, this is a physical reaction to the energy of freaking people cheering. I am like, I cannot believe that I'm
That's
bodily
crazy.
feeling this. So
The sound
yeah, it was,
waves. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was crazy, but even everything was done so professional. Like, I mean, it sounds small, but like the hotel, like, each country had its own floor. But then, Hockey Canada organized, we had a masseuse and a PT, like they gave them their own rooms. And so we had our own team masseuse and these types of things back then was
Yeah.
unheard of. So to that level and, signing autographs wherever we went, walking in, I remember I came back so supercharged that I called everybody in women's sports I could think of at the time, Rika. Sherry was the president. Reebok was really promoting anybody who I could think of that I had ever heard them mention women's sports. I'm like, you've got to get into this game called women's hockey. And actually, it's funny. I really did. I mean, I don't know what got into me. I just picked up the phone and just dialed, and I called the Women's Sports Foundation, and Yolanda Jackson answered. And I'm like, well, if anybody would want to support it, it would be a women's sports foundation. And just told her a little bit about the sport and the game and the growth and the potential and what was going on. And of course, the college and scholarships, which, brings a whole nother level to the support going into the national team programs. And she's like, what are you doing October 21st? And I'm like, well, I could be free. And she invited me to be the spokesperson to their black tie gala of
Oh,
celebrating all women in sports. So ever since that day, we've had a female hockey player representative with the Women's Sports Foundation.
oh,
And
that's fantastic.
to a point right now where Megan Duggan is the
Yeah.
president of the
Oh,
Women's Sports Foundation.
I had
So
no idea that's how it began. That's great.
yeah, I get in these moods and something gets in my head and I swear I just kept phoning people. I was like completely tenacious. Yeah, that's another word for annoying, I'm sure.
No, no, you have to be. I mean, like getting sponsorships, but I mean, now it's a different world. But back then, no, I mean, no one was paying attention to it, and you couldn't knock on the door. You had to bang the door down.
Right.
Is really what it boiled down to. No, that's
Right.
great. Good on you. Well, that leads to the Olympic experience. So, '98 in Nagano, you worked with USA Hockey as an athletic rep, right?
Yeah, that type of
And
thing.
and then 2002 at Salt Lake City, you were the game day offs for both the men and women's. Talk about
Yeah.
like, hey, take it easy, have a nice vacation over for the Olympics. What was that? How would that? I mean, talk to us about your Olympic experience.
Well, that's where a lot of people, when I was referring to late before, when people said, "Oh, well, it's sad. Are you sad? That you got cut for the '98 team?" And that's where my wholehearted answer is no. I feel blessed for all the opportunities that opened up right in front of my lifetime, and then of course, having Sarah and the way in which they won the gold medal is a truly just proud to be American and the pride of that win. So um, yeah, it was really amazing. Right towards the end of my playing time, I was called Grandma. That was my nickname in the dressing room. And even now, like talking with Angela Ruggiero, she's like, "Yeah, I remember," because she came up. I think she was 15 at the
Oh my
time. She came
gosh.
up to San Jose, so we were playing in California, and somebody got hurt or something, so they had to call her in, and they had been watching her, and so she just came in, maybe practice midway through or something, and coach is like, "Yeah, you're in charge. You're in charge of that one." And I'm like, "All right, whatever." So she remembered we were actually at a TED Talk in Boston, and somebody said, "How'd you two meet?" She goes, "Oh my God, I remember when I met you. I thought you were so old. Like, what were you doing here?" I did the math, so I was 30 at the time, and I was like, "Oh
To a
my
15-year-old,
God,
year old, yeah.
yeah, right." So yeah, just amazing. And so I think I was 32. I say stop playing, but when I got cut, and so it was about time, I mean, we were talking before about bodies and pains, and
Yeah,
what hurts is, I had to take an ice bath every day at the end of that day so I could skate the next. And at the time, I didn't know if it was hips or knees or backs. I mean, the pain was so
yeah.
intense. I didn't know what it was. So it turned out it was my hips, and I
Oh,
had had them both replaced since. So
to get into
pretty.
its quick sidebar, is that how you got into the polar bear stuff? Was that from there, you think?
No, it wasn't. That's sort of like overall health.
Yeah.
But I was reminded, just like I've been doing it for like a year and a half, and I was just reminded, like, I don't know, a month or so ago, I was like, oh right, I used to do this. I like drew the connection a little bit later.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Sorry.
it was, being removed from the team was, difficult, and now I see it, and it's actually nice because I can speak to it with others. It's, it's an uproaring of everything you've been working for, and even deeper than that, it became such a essence of your own identity,
Yeah.
and you don't realize it. And I remember just being like, no kid's ever gonna want my autograph ever again because I'm not the USA goalie. Like, of course, they
Right,
don't
right,
really
right.
always know the details. So,
Right.
but once I got through all that, and I realized there's a lot of good to still come from this, and um, then the team asked me to USA Hockey asked me to go to the games and just sort of be the spokesperson for women's hockey, and to be in like the media situations and the like the AT&T lounge and things, and answer questions. Why is there checking in women's hockey? Why isn't there checking?
What's
Um,
offsides? Yes.
yes. Well, not so much that, more of the aspects between men's and women's hockey.
All the
You
comparison
know,
and contrast. Yeah.
yeah. So I did a lot of interviews, just talks with groups of people. AT&T was wonderful to us. So again, met with a lot of sponsors. There was a woman writing a book at the time. Um, so, spending a lot of time with her. It was a really amazing experience. At the time, I was the athlete representative to the executive committee. So, the bylaws of the USOC and the International Ice Hockey Federation are to have an athlete that's within 10 years of their playing time to be on the board of
Oh.
directors, to be able to have sort of like an active voice at the time.
And to give
So,
a player's perspective. Yeah. No, that makes
right.
sense.
Yeah, to talk about travels or logistics or uniforms or training or rest ratios and these types of things. And so I had been on the board for a while, and then actually the first ever USA Hockey athlete representatives were myself and Mark Fusco.
Oh, yeah. I remember the
So Mark,
Fuscos.
yeah, so he was a wonderful person to partner with, and from there we built a committee, a whole committee. So he and I were the directors, and then he moved on to be in his professional life, and then I ran it for a while. I think until my 10 years for my active playing. So being that I had been on that position really, I think, helped or encouraged USA Hockey for wanting me to travel with them talking about USA Hockey, because I could speak on a lot of different levels. The girls women participation, the growth rates since 1990 World Championships, what it meant, the growth by state and all these things. I mean, it was very well connected to all that information.
I mean, you actually lived it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. So it was
talk
very
about boots on
natural
the
and
ground,
organic.
right?
Yeah. So it was great. And one of the things that I really did to impress myself when we were there, so they had obviously a lot of Japanese food on one buffet, but then they always were very conscientious to have, Americanized food on the other. But I did my best to represent both and have both buffets.
The sacrifices that you do is, yeah.
It's a good thing we had a lot of walking, because I managed not to have too much damage, but it was a wonderful experience. And off days, I had Olympic tickets for anything I really wanted to see.
Oh, yeah.
I met another person who had a similar position that I did, and we just became travel buddies. And one day we're like, we went and did all the museums downtown, and we
Oh,
went through this flower expo that was like out of this world, and checked out a little bit of history and art, and that was really enjoyable as well.
and I would imagine that's stuff that the players or athletes of any sport don't get to do with they don't have that much downtime, I would think, in terms of
Right, and
meeting and video and everything, everything
right,
else.
very strict schedule as an athlete, and
Right.
especially traveling far away, but they were restricted to the village quite often. And I actually lived out in the mountains in a cabin, and at the time it was right when the men's hockey became going pro.
Oh, the pro
And
players game, yep.
wasn't determined right till the end, so they didn't have room for him in the village. So Team Canada and Team USA were out in the cabins that I was in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was really fun too. It was beautiful. We took the high-speed trains back and forth every day, so it was quite an experience. And at the time, I was working full-time for Louisville Slugger. So Louisville Slugger, which is also Louisville Hockey at the time, was my sponsor.
Mm.
Um, and I joined with them with the purpose of creating women's ice hockey equipment.
So I read a blurb somewhere. Did they basically be like, "Hey, we want to do hockey. Help us"? Was that basically the?
No, I went to them
Oh,
and
okay.
said,
All right. I wasn't sure.
yeah. So I called again. I called Bauer. I called CCM. I called anybody who was making hockey equipment. Um, it helped that Louisville Hockey was making goalie equipment too, because I also needed a sponsor.
Yeah.
And so they became my sponsor. And with that, I got to know them and had the trust value there grow. And I said, look at the growth numbers here. At the time, everything was made in Canada. So really not that hard to shift your manufacturing. So we created shoulder pads with breast protection. We created women's hockey pants that were narrower and shorter in the waist. A lot of the people, again, like look at a Cami Granado or a Lisa Brown Miller, you have those big kidney pads, but they had to be pulled in so tight. The kidney
Right.
pads are actually sitting on their bellies.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to bend over and
Yeah.
skate.
Right.
You're
Right.
getting total collision into your rib cage.
Yeah.
So not only poor mobility, carrying extra weight, but not enhancing their performance either. So pants, shoulder pads, we did gloves, we had a custom glove line, so we shortened the gussets because most women's fingers aren't as thick,
Hmm.
shortened the palms, but the big thing is we created sticks with softer flexes. So we got down to the
Oh,
45s and 50s, 65s,
interesting. I didn't know
and
that.
also
Yeah.
created a smaller radius in the handle. So your hand, I'm going, it's like again, huge flashback here. So your hand could go all the way around the shaft, giving you greater strength transfer from your hands to the apparatus to the movement of the puck.
Again, something that unless you were a female hockey player wouldn't have entered probably into your thinking in terms of the
Right.
product. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And as a side note, if you ever are in Louisville and get the chance to tour that factory, the way you can watch a bat from start to finish through the whole factory is worth your time. It was
Yeah.
I'm not a baseball guy, but that was really cool when I went. Yeah, that was
It
very great.
was. And I lived right above that. So the oval that was cut into the floor where the factory was down below, our offices were right above. So I
Oh,
sat right above that.
oh, that's great.
And it was extraordinary. And again, I wasn't a huge baseball person
Yeah.
myself, but the heritage there and, the creation, US made, all of those elements, the pride of the people there was extraordinary.
When you were there, was the Muhammad Ali Museum open at that time?
No, it was just opening, and all the museums worked in connection with each other because, museums actually a hard business to be
Hmm.
in. And so we are also connected to the Kentucky Derby Museum.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask. That was my next question. If you ever got to go to the Derby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I sat in Millionaires Row and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
nice.
somebody had tickets and life things happened that they couldn't go. And so the night before, Mr. Jack Helrick swung by my desk. He goes, I got 4 tickets for the Derby tomorrow. You interested? And so
Let me
grabbed
get
you.
my bonnet.
I had a bonnet. I couldn't believe it.
You have
I
to.
had a flowered shirt and a hat with a thingy and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
So
that's the whole deal. So now Salt Lake, you were in a similar, but for both
no,
teams.
right. So for Salt Lake City, it was actually hired by, a division of the Olympic Committee.
Oh, okay, okay.
So here I was with the organizing committee of the Olympics. And again, as you had said so perfectly, because I had lived it, so the International Ice Hockey Federation has different game day ops than
Mhm.
you would see here. The smallest details, home team enters the hallway to enter the ice first. You can't go at the same time, these
Right.
types of things. So again, I lived them, I knew them. So then I was the assistant, actually game day operation person for the Provo arena. So not the Salt Lake main stadium, but the other arena, which is Provo.
So did you? I don't know if you saw recently when the NHL went to Switzerland this year. There was a warm up that they didn't have. One team didn't have pucks. Did you see this?
Okay. No,
And
I didn't.
it just clicked in my head. I'm like, oh, someone who is the game day ops probably screwed that up.
Yeah.
We just talked about that. It might have been the I don't know if the Jets went or the Blue Jackets, but one team had to go half their warm up without pucks. The guys were just skating in circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough
Yeah.
look. Tough look on the
Yeah, so
game day.
these are the types of things that I took care of, and it was funny. My biggest game was the Czech game. I can't remember who they were playing, but it was one of their rivals, and they were supposed to win easily. So
Mm.
the other director said, "Oh, Kelly, why don't you take it tonight, and you feel comfortable?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, I got this, no problem." And it went into overtime shootout.
Oh
So
man.
whole nother set of protocols and rules and all of that. So, but everything went super smoothly, went perfectly. No situation. So, but I remember I'm like, oh, this is my game day. Like, I better get this right. And everything went beautifully. So the next day, they're like, holy shit! Like every other game, nothing special was needed. We just, got the pucks, got the
Right, right.
thing. And they're like, we can't believe it. We take a night off, and you end up with that. I said, so much fun.
Yeah, that's great though. That's what makes it, right? You talk about
Yeah.
another memory, right?
Well,
Locked
I
in.
think it's sort of like a goalie thing. You're kind of conditioned not to overreact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of like, all right, this is what's happening. Gotta do what I gotta do.
Yeah. The job doesn't change. I still got to keep the puck out of the net no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, keep it to its most basic, simple elements.
And
My
then
goalie coach growing up was Joe Britannia. So Joe was my
okay, yeah,
goalie
yeah.
coach since like 1977. So again, don't do the math.
Yeah.
But he always, drilled us in our heads even when we were little is, just it's just one puck at a time, one save at a time.
Yeah.
It's funny now when everybody talks about mindfulness and all of that. It's sort of the message now today, stay in the present.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So then after this USA Hockey Board of Directors, you were with like Louisville, like you had said, Easton Diamond Sports, Surgically Clean Air. You've been hats in a lot of different.
Well, yes and no. So I was with Louisville Hockey for 17 years. So at the time, like, and people in sports were like rotating all over the place. I'm like, not me, man.
Yeah,
I
you
am
good,
here.
right?
I
Yeah,
am good to go. And then Louisville sold to Sherwood.
yeah,
So, tried that for a while, but they didn't have the same level of respect. So the other thing, like with Louisville, not only was I the female hockey product manager, but then I could also was very versed in goaltending. So those were my two focuses. And I was pro hockey, another first, I was pro hockey services. So um, our president, Bill Clark at the time, is like, oh, you're so outgoing and stuff, you should take care of our pro players. And then he didn't tell me 2 years later, he's like, oh, if there's a female in the NHL dressing room, they're going to know that Louisville is there. And so, but my first player was Mark Messier with the Rangers.
nice. Oh,
What a
Ked, my
thrill.
co-host is going to be super mad he's not here for that. He worships Messier, big Rangers guy.
Yeah. And so, Mark was a great Louisville guy. He's just one of our marquee athletes ever. And my boss, which is our president, Graham Watson, was actually the one in charge of Mark because he was so high profile. But Graham, as a president, had so much to do that even once I started working in the office, I was sort of doing all the things for Mark and his family behind the scenes. So I was very well versed. And so when I ended up having Mark as a one-on-one, as a direct athlete, it went really well. It was, I took great pride in being able to get him any of the tools of the game that he would possibly want. And he's pretty funny guy, actually, and he's hysterical and just a wonderful person. But he was using something Revolution at the time was a rubberized shaft, and he would go through lots of wood blades, and he was very picky, and so there was lots of little things you had to be very attentive to with him. He actually had the old cowhide gloves. Yeah, if you recall, they came all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way up to the floor,
yeah.
but they were actually true cowhide. At the time, most players had turned to Nash, which is more breathable and lighter weight, but he still wore the true cowhide. And
Like 10
it
pounds
was,
soaking wet by the end of the game. Yeah,
yeah, no
each
doubt.
hand. Yeah.
But also a fun thing for me at the time is, Mike Richter was the goalie. So Mike and I got to spend a lot of time talking. He was the U.S. goalie and I was the U.S. goalie. So, yeah, just great. And then obviously Wayne Gretzky was there. So I got
Not
to
a big deal. It's just Gretzky.
another super nice person.
Oh yeah,
And also very funny. So no, that was a great experience. And I think when you have the respect of having one of the greatest all-time players in the sport of ice hockey as somebody you take care of, automatically it just was, spoke boundaries not only to the Rangers but to all the teams. So
yeah. It's an endorsement. Yeah,
yeah, it's like,
yeah.
oh well, she can take care of everything Mark needs. Maybe you should do a good job with me too.
Good enough for mess.
So,
I think I could be okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's crazy. I did that. See, that's the stuff like you do research, and about your history and your work career, but stuff like that doesn't, that's the stuff we don't get until we talk. It's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I took great pride in doing that. Had a lot of fun, and again, when I've been talking about, especially with the Title IX anniversary of last year and things, people are like, oh, this, that, and the other thing, and it didn't really feel like I was, breaking any glass ceilings or anything, but it was a pretty unique
Yeah.
experience. And a couple people would ask, what was it like? And people either thought I was a physical therapist or a reporter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
just really interesting. So it was cool, but now to see the level of acceptance of, women working with NHL teams and women working in NHL hockey. So it's great to see that growth and acceptance.
So what are your all right? I want to get to the Beanpot, but what are your thoughts on the PWHL?
I think it's great. Again, I'm really into things being well organized
Yep.
and connected and having the purpose, and then also doing the good of promoting the sport and the female athletes. And really, as I'm on a couple of committees trying to, um, unite to fill the garden for the women's Beanpot on
Yep.
January 23rd.
Very
Um,
excited for this. Yeah.
yeah, so we're really talking about, it's not just women's hockey, it's not just hockey, it's not just women's, but it's a great event,
Yeah.
you know.
For
So
anyone that's listening outside of the Boston area, for those that don't know, the Beanpot pits Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern, and Harvard, and it's a random drawing for the first game, and then the winners play each other and the losers play each other the following week, and it's a fantastic tournament. And I say all the time when I have Husky players on that they should go watch the women's hockey at Matthews, because pound for pound, it's the best hockey. It's the best hockey value per your dollar in Massachusetts, and it's historic Matthews. But this year, for the women's, they're finally allowing the finals games to be at the TD Garden, home of the Bruins, which, we're talking about 15 years too late. But hey, we're there, so that's all that matters. But these games, there's so much interconnection between the players and the schools. They're all recruited by the same coaches. They all know each other. They all played together growing up and against each other in the off season. These are the best games that you can see, in my opinion, in Massachusetts around this time. I'd put it up there with it would be, imagine if like the Bruins, the Canadians, the Sabres, and like the old Hartford Whalers used to get together. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. It's
yeah,
fantastic. So sorry, I derailed. Sorry, but
no, you're right on par. I've been working a lot with Mary from Woman X, and then also a host of others, and AJ Molesko, Linda Lundergan from Northeastern, and we've been getting together on a regular basis, talking about other ways for outreach, for getting the message out, and that has been our line, is that this is just an extraordinary event,
hmm,
a sporting event.
yeah,
And then, yes, it is women's, but let's not just think, we need to just have, women's hockey teams go. It's beyond that now,
yeah,
of the talent level. But not only that, there's something that ignites from within for a playoff, a championship, such as the Beanpot, with such rich history, excitement. I mean, it just brings it to a whole nother
yeah.
level. It's really, it's awesome.
Next meeting that you're at, suggest this. Can we get T-shirts for kids at these events, please?
Yeah,
I don't know why every time I go to any of these events, I walk up to the concessions and I say, "Hey, do you have any kid sizes?" And the the last Beanpot at BC, they were like, no, but I got all the way up to 4X. I'm like, I want one for my daughter. This is the future of the game. So yeah, if you could put a little note from Brownie from the morning skate.
Yeah, no, you're right. And of course, I guess I've always sort of had this common thread of attraction towards sponsors, but my thought was like, let's get with Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, they're already the marquee sponsor for the Beanpot.
Right.
They're obviously awesome, something we need in our lives every day. But and I'm sure they would love the opportunity. So again, it's just making the right connection with who at Dunkin' to continue with that, because that's what we were saying is like, say you have a section of the garden, it's going to be general seating.
Okay.
And the ticket prices are really reasonable. So it's really, like you said, one of the best values there.
And you get 2 games. It's not one game. You get 2 games both nights. So you pay for 2 games. It's 1 ticket for 2 games.
Right. So something that, we're thinking with the 4 teams on it with, Dunkin' branded and TD Garden and all of that. So doing like a co-branded and,
on the kids ones,
things.
put the mascots on there or something, it'd be,
I think meant goalie masks, the goalie masks.
Oh, goalie masks would be good too. Yeah. Listen,
good
as long as there's something that people can buy for their kids, because their kids are going to grow up to be the next athletes in these games. Right. As much as I tell Coach Carp that I still have NCAA eligibility, I'm not getting the call for a Beanpot. So
it could be the beard if you think
maybe the beard's not helping. Wait till it's not. Wait till my daughter dies it for Christmas. I'll look much younger. But yeah, it's a great event. I would think that, I know they got a lot going on. They're trying to get off the ground, but going forward, I think the PWHL will be a great sponsor for the Beanpot as well for the women's side.
Right. So the Boston team is away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the travel time doesn't work for this year. But that has been one of our big thoughts, is sort of just the connection of everything and bringing it together. So yes, that'll be a thought for the future. A lot
of players in the PWHL played in the Beanpot also.
Right. Yeah. We're trying to do a little flash series of like a player and their reflection, and like again, put out for social media what was
that'd be great.
It like, and
I
a lot of the players, like I talked with Kendall Coyne not long ago, and she's just like, it's about time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's soften that, because now we're doing it. And let's.
I know. I do the same thing. I'm like, but I'm glad we're here, right? That's you got to keep the positive, half full versus half empty. The first game is January 16th. Is that the first?
Yes.
The first matchup, I believe, is January 16th. And for those that know, Katie Knoll, as I call her, the premier power forward in women's hockey today, Katie's birthday is January 16th, I found out. So no pressure. I expect 3-2 for 5 from Katie on that night.
Are you able to put up the link to the tickets and stuff from the TD Garden? And
in theory, I can. I will do my best. Listen, the fact that I hit record and played the music is a big accomplishment without Ken here. So yeah, we will definitely put mention of it, and I can talk to our graphics guy when we do the graphics for this episode. I'll see if he can get the information about the Beanpot on there too. I don't see why that won't be.
It's getting the word out and the connection, and then the message I keep coming up with is not only is to inform and excite, but then also to have the action of the purchasing of the tickets, because lives are busy and many different things pulling at us all is the ability to just click and send right there too.
I just wrote it down on my paper, so
you're like me.
Yeah. Yes. If it's not written down, it's out of my head.
T-shirts.
Yeah.
I'm sticking
that one's locked in, because every time I go, I try to bring my daughter home something. It could be something as simple as like a sticker, and she's thrilled. If she can't go to the game, she loves going to Matthews. But
I love Matthews too. I still get goosebumps going to Matthews. I mean, that is why I went to Northeastern.
Cause I was going to ask how you picked. We skipped over. We blew through Northeastern. Was Matthews a big contributing factor?
Yes. I mean, we walked in, I was doing a tour. I was with my mother, and we walked into Matthews, and I just stopped and I just looked to her. I said, this is where I'm going to play.
Isn't it awesome? We had Irving, when Skylar Irving came on, she said it was similar. She was like, I'm going to play on that ice, was like her initial reaction. Well, that's perfect, because that leads me to the lightning round questions. And one of the lightning round questions. All right. So we'll jump into the lightning round. These are not always hockey related, and bear with me. These are idiotic, but they're very popular. Your favorite cartoon character?
I'm gonna go with Mickey Mouse.
Fair. Besides hockey, what was your favorite and least favorite jobs? And you don't have to go specific on your least favorite if you just want to give like a overview of something that you had to do.
Yeah. Well, this is the beauty of the co-op because learning what you don't like to do is
There you
equally as
go.
important
There
as
you go.
learning. So my worst job ever in my life, nothing against the company, was with
Right.
Putnam Investor Services doing data entry on
Oh,
a team of people. And it was the only time in my life that I was like this at like 2:15, just praying for that day to be over.
and what was your most favorite?
Oh, well, representing Team USA and
There
wearing the
you
red,
go.
white, and blue.
There you go. Listen, I'll keep lobbing them up for you, so that's easy.
Yeah.
What's your favorite vehicle you've ever owned?
Ooh, that is really tough. I love cars.
Okay.
Mustang, the old Mustangs,
Yep.
especially the 66, was probably my favorite. But then also like trucks and Jeeps, and
All
then
right.
the new electric vehicles. So a big host, but I'd have to summarize it with a Mustang.
Okay. First celebrity crush.
Was Ken Dryden a celebrity? I'm going to say
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Ken Dryden was a celebrity.
Either
Uh,
that or Captain Kirk from Star Wars.
oh, yeah, oh, Star Trek. Star Trek. Yeah, yeah. All right. This is where we start to go off the rails. Would you rather
Uh-oh.
fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Fight?
Yeah, you have to fight no barehanded to the death.
I usually tend to talk my way out of fights and not actually participate
All right,
in
so who would
them.
be more receptive then? A horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Who are you
A
gonna
horse-sized duck.
All right. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you choose?
Can it be two places?
Sure.
Alaska and Mexico.
Nice. Very nice.
After
Uh,
Boston, of course, because I do
yeah,
love
yeah.
it. Yeah.
What is a skill you don't possess but you would love to master?
Would that be patience?
Yeah, that might be the best answer ever. Usually someone's like guitar, you know what I mean? Or I want to learn how to juggle, but that's probably the best introspective answer that
I
we've
have
ever
been
had.
working on patience for a very long time and just starting to get it now. So I'm proud of myself for that.
Listen, I might have to use that answer. So here you go. Favorite and least favorite rinks that you've played in.
Favorite rink? Well,
We could
either.
take Matthews out of it because we know Matthews. So if you want to take that out of it, you feel
So
free.
it'd have to be Lake Placid,
Okay.
the 80 arena. And my least favorite arena? Oh, I can get the smell of just thinking of a couple of them. There was an old barn in Amesbury. It probably doesn't exist anymore, so I'm going to go with the old barn in Amesbury.
By the ski, where the ski, up by the ski place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think the ice was crooked, like the goals didn't even line up with each other, and you couldn't see a thing in there. It was so dark.
All right. I think I know the answer to this one. Would you rather speak every language of the world or have the ability to talk to animals?
Oh, talk to
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah. A TV show that you're embarrassed to admit you watch, or your most recent binge?
Well, Gilmore Girls, but that's because my daughter thoroughly
Did she just
enjoyed it.
discover it?
Well, a little bit ago, but I must say it was a great resource for opening up many conversations.
Oh, nice. Besides hockey, if you could pick a pro sport to be successful at, what would it be?
Soccer.
Okay. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't.
All right.
Anything by Jim Croce, though, at home, I'm pretty good
Oh,
with that.
okay.
And
Oh,
James
sad.
Taylor type thing.
If you could pick one superpower, what would it be?
Like superpower, like we think out of the movies superpower.
Any way you want to interpret these questions. You've given
Yeah.
the fact that the thought that you put into these questions is very impressive, I will say.
Well, thinking too much might be a problem.
No, no.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with extraordinary knowing.
Okay. If you go to the movies, what's your concession stand order? What's your standard order? You don't go to the movies? Or you don't
No, I
get
do go to the
concessions?
movies, but I wouldn't have pretty much anything from there.
This is the difference in talking to like successful athletes. Like Abby Marone came on the podcast, and I bring this up all the time. I was like, "What's your like big cheat meal?" And she's like, "Sweet potatoes." And I was like, "Good Lord." If
Well,
you
mine
had
would be chocolate, but then like it
okay,
has to be like real chocolate, like good chocolate,
yeah,
and not that has a lot of artificial ingredients
yeah,
or wax.
okay. That's why you get you get chocolate when you're up in Canada. Um,
Yes.
if you had Doc Brown's DeLorean, where are you going? Where are you going first time? Your first trip in the DeLorean, where are you going timeline wise?
Um, I don't know. In this moment, in this conversation, I'd say, the 80 Olympics and be able to
Okay.
watch it in
Yeah.
person and
You
be
don't have to
part of
you
all
don't
of
have to sell us on that. That's our opening music is Al Michaels calling us.
that. Yeah.
Just two more. Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Oh, geez. I'd like to think of somebody extraordinarily beautiful, but then I don't know if it'd be fitting. Um, just because I just watched her in a recent movie, I'm going to go with Jodie Foster, and I also followed her as a kid.
Very good actress too. She could do it.
She's
And then
amazing.
this last one, you don't have to call this person. Who's the most famous person in your phone
In my phone.
that you're comfortable sharing? I mean, if you have like President Obama's in there or something, you don't have to share.
Michelle. Yeah.
It's just Michelle.
I think it's probably Mark Messier.
I was thinking when you started talking about Messier and Gretzky, I'm like,
Yeah.
she's gonna say Mark Messier, and Ked's gonna lose his mind when he hears this because he would have probably 50 questions just about Messier. He loves
Yeah.
the guy.
Well,
Yeah.
I also got to work a lot with Mark's sister, Mary Kay.
Oh,
And she was awesome to work with. And again, a real powerhouse in all of sports. And so working with her taught me a lot too. So again, I'm going to go with Mary Kay and Mark Messier.
there you go. Perfect. It's funny you say that about these guys. So when I first started doing this, I like reached out to the Bruins alumni and the alumni office, and I was like, hey, I'm a writer for this blog, and they said if I can get a former Bruin, I can interview him on the pod. This is before I was co-hosting or anything. And they're like, who do you like to talk to? And I'm like, my favorite player growing up was Bobby Carpenter. And they're like, she emailed me back in like 10 minutes and she's like, oh, you're going to get a call. He literally called me and I was so nervous. And I talked to Ked, my co-host. He goes, the thing you got to remember is they're just like you, but they're just better at hockey. And that was like his advice. And I was like shaking talking to Bobby Carpenter. I mean, yeah,
It's
everybody
funny.
loves
Yeah.
Ray Bork and Cam Neely, but Carpenter was my guy, right?
Yeah.
And I just loved the way he played. And
Yeah.
especially growing up here and how he went from high school to can't miss kid and all that stuff. And it's funny, like we meet these people in our this, if you want to call this a career, this nonsense that I do for the morning skate. But like I met Wayne Gretzky's dad years ago before he passed away. The nicest guy on the planet. I didn't know who he was until afterwards. And it's amazing the people that you meet and how much time they give you and how much, and you as well, what you've accomplished. It's like, this is a big deal for us, to have you come on. And I can't thank you enough. It's just, it was great.
Well, thank you. It's actually fun as a trip through memory lane as well. As you're speaking at different neurons fire and different memories come up that you don't usually ponder on a natural Monday
Yeah.
afternoon. So it's actually really fun. And thank you. You're a wonderful host.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Now, listen, the Huskies will be back January. I should have had this in front of me. I think it's January 3rd, their first game back after the break. The Beanpot is the first game is the 16th and the 23rd. The PWHL kicks off their inaugural game. I believe it's January 1st up in, I think they're playing in, it's New York versus Montreal, I believe, is the first game.
And is their first home game on the 3rd?
Is that for the Boston team?
Yeah, we're going on the 20th.
Nice.
Yeah.
Songus Arena, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is actually, the people in Northeastern aren't happy about this, but for us that live out this way, this is a lot easier. Songus than going into the city. I was very happy to hear the Songus Arena. But yeah, so thank you, Kelly Dyer Hayes. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Remember, like I say all the time, the best entertainment value pound for pound in the city of Boston for hockey is at historic Matthews Arena for the women's game. But hey, the men's game's not bad either. So, as a backup to the women's. But yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And you'll hear us, me and Ked, back to our usual nonsense in the not too distant future.
All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.